Yes. Hi. Hi, this is Jennifer Callender, and I am a certified franchise consultant with FranServe, and we have here my lovely co-host.
Tony Harris Taylor, franchisee for Network in Action. Hey, Jennifer, how are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
I am doing very well, thank you.
Good.
Excited to be here. We started this and we're just like, where is this taking us?
I
And
know.
so, thank you so much for being consistent. I'm a marketing specialist, and consistency is the key. And thank you so much for being consistent, even when life happens, right?
That's right. And life happened to me this week, but I'm not going to let it stop me. I did a little travel. I went to visit with my parents. And don't know if it happened on the plane ride there or if it actually happened there, but I tested positive for COVID.
Ick, icky.
Ugh. So I have been down and out for a couple of days. I am still recovering now, and it seems like nighttime is the worst with all the symptoms that happen. But hey, I'm here today. I'm excited. So excited for the guests that we have. But first, before we bring him on board, how was your week?
Thank you for asking. I had a pretty good week. This was NIA week.
Yeah.
So we had our in-person meetings and our virtual meeting, and you came on to that for a little while.
Yes.
And so we had a phenomenal networking meetings. And then this week I'm ramping up to get ready for the IFA International Franchise Association show. And then I also had two VIP days with my coach who like steered me in the right direction for my businesses. So, yeah, it was a fantastic week. Coaches need coaches.
Yeah, I
And
love that.
yeah, and as a franchise consultant, you're a coach of sorts,
I am a coach of sorts, and I
right?
am going to be getting a coach. So you look out for conversations there, Tony. We've been joined at the hip with this fantastic duo, but we know that we also need to invest in ourselves, right?
Right. Right. So it was great having him come and help me break down the numbers. And he has franchise experience as well. So yeah, it was really a
Oh,
great.
wonderful. Wonderful. So I know you're excited for big things to come, right? As a result of that.
Absolutely. Hey,
Yeah.
Val, thank you for being there. I know you are disappointed you can't
I
meet with
know. Well,
Jennifer.
I met Val virtually, and she's here visiting in Atlanta. We had time set up to meet, but because of my COVID situation, we're gonna have to
Well,
plan for the next time.
the good news is she's there all the time,
That's
at
right.
least every other month. So you will get a
So
chance to
Val,
meet
no
her.
worries there. We're gonna meet face to face.
Awesome.
Yes.
So you
So
want to bring on our guest?
yes. So let's bring on our guest. Our guest is Mr. Ben Madry the second. He is a graduate of Prairie View A&M University. He has a strong background in HR, and he's worked in different capacities with Dow Chemical and British Petroleum. He is a photographer,
Hmm.
and he is the owner of a magazine. He's published a magazine. I'm sure you'll hear more about that. But like I mentioned, he is the owner of Anytime Fitness in Houston, Texas, and he works on. So Anytime Fitness is part of Self Esteem brand, and he
Mm.
works in the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Council there. So I'm sure we'll get some insights there on what that work looks like. But without further ado, I bring to the stage Mr. Ben Madry II. Ben, the floor is yours. Tell us about yourself and your journey to Anytime Fitness.
Well, thank you, and I appreciate the gracious opening for me. Um, uh, my journey is long. I've done a lot of things in life, and I dare say that I probably have more jobs than most people ever dreamed to have. Uh, because of necessity. I started working at 10 years old, and I've been working ever since then. So it's just a fact of life, and that's part of the things that my parents instilled in me is hard work and work ethic and being a person of integrity. So that's kind of what led me to where I am. So as a backdrop, I'm actually an engineer by training. So I started school at the University of Texas, where I often say that that's where I grew up, but I got my education from Prairie View A&M. So mechanical engineer, I had the opportunity because of PV to work for General Motors in summer intern jobs in Detroit. But my family was in Houston. And so, and my eventual wife was in Dallas. So that led me to taking a job opportunity in the Houston area with Dow Chemical. And so I worked several years in kind of the engineering capacity, mechanical type stuff. Dow is a chemical company, so I ran chemical plants. And ultimately, in my effort to get promoted in that company, as big corporate companies do, they make you switch functions. And so I went to HR as a route to develop myself and to become promoted in the company. Well, what I discovered about myself was this ability to get things done through people. And for the next 11 years at Dow Chemical, I worked all over the world doing all types of business building on Dow's behalf, primarily through people. And that part was a glorious learning. It allowed me to truly understand myself and how companies work. So, for those who are afraid of leaving what they're good at, don't be afraid to do that, because ultimately everything you do is going to be something that's going to lead you to be better at what you're most strong at. So it doesn't matter. Just don't allow fear to stop you from doing what you're doing. But along that HR track, one of the things that I am most proud of is that I had the opportunity to start, implement, and put in place the diversity program for Dow Chemical. Back in the late 90s, the buzzword of diversity came up. We hear it all the time now, but it really didn't start showing up until the late 90s. And so in the late 90s, Dow Chemical, trying to figure out how to be a better global company, said, well, we have to do diversity different than we do. And so I was this engineer doing well in HR. So they tapped me on the shoulder and said, hey, figure this out. So that's something that I'm most proud of, because for a 50,000 people company around the world, we implemented a diversity program. So that was part of the joy that I had in my background. But as all things do come, good things come to an end. I got promoted to a level that Dow said, hey, you need to move to Michigan. All these big jobs, they're all in Michigan, so you need to move to Michigan. And my wife was like, look, I'm not living in a town smaller than Dallas. and Dow was headquartered in Midland, Michigan. And so we did not go. So I left Dow at that time. This is back in mid 2014 or something like that. Anyway, what I did was I went to BP for a short amount of time, realized that the culture at BP was the worst on the planet. This is following the oil spill. It was a gotcha culture. It was not something I wanted to do. Fortunate for me, my resume allowed me to go and take a job in Austin, Texas, which was a president of a small technology company. And I had a great time doing that job. But that job pulled me away from my family so much. If you can imagine trying to tutor algebra, I'm an engineer, right? So I'm good at math. Try to tutor algebra with a seventh grade, my kids, seventh grade, on FaceTime. That was a terrible event. So my wife and I decided, okay, I need to slow down and let's put our family first. So I stopped doing that, but I needed to do something. So I already had a hobby as photography. So I said, well, in the meantime, let me do this photography thing. So for about a year, I did photography. But what you realize in photography is that when people got their phones, they stopped paying money for photography.
Mm-hmm.
And but I that experience led me to say, okay, well, let me take this photography and then start a magazine. Well, I started a magazine, ran it successfully for about 6 months, and then realized that that was too big for one person to handle. I hired people to help me out. Unfortunately, as many things are, if you don't have the right people, it's hard to make anything work.
Right.
So I decided to stop doing that because, again, my family was in the way. If I could have made it successful, but I would have worked 80 hours a week, and that was not my intent. So that led me to doing something else, which was starting the Anytime Fitness franchise. And I've always been sort of a sandlot basketball player. I'm tall. Even now, I got 2 basketballs in my car. And at this age, if I see some elementary kids playing basketball, I go over there and pound on them. So, but I've always been a kind of health and fitness person. And so it was a natural fit kind of with my heart and my passion. And so my wife and I did the due diligence and studied and figured it out. And so about 5 years ago, we went through the process of starting the franchise. We went to Minnesota, which is where they are, and got the due diligence done. And so we opened up Anytime Fitness Grand Parkway here in Houston.
So what led you to consider a franchise over just renting a space and putting your equipment in there and doing it on your own? How did you get to franchising versus startup?
That's a very good question. There's pluses and minuses of going in both directions, right? What you give up in a franchise situation is you give up identity because it's a brand management. You sign away your right to personalize it. You sign away your right to identify singularly. But the benefit is you get an organization that already should have brand awareness, that already should have a foundation set, and much more than that. If I started a gym by myself, the equipment would have been so astronomical. Because of the size of Anytime Fitness, I was able to get the equipment for 60 cents on the dollar because of the buying power.
Wow.
And so along with the investment, and then along with, being able to join an organization that already had a lot of the things in place, that just made it much more advantageous for us to try to ramp up and be successful. Because if I did it by myself, I could have, but I likely would have chosen a location that would have been a little bit more difficult to manage because of trying to figure out how to grow it, and things like that. And so Anytime, or generally any franchise, would offer that kind of support to get you going, as opposed to you trying to do and lift the entire ball by yourself.
That's great. I really appreciate you touching on those points as far as your drivers for making the decision to franchise. When you think about your journey, I know that franchising is a process. So can you recall some of the obstacles that you ran into when you were setting up or entertaining Anytime?
Yeah, I mean, part of it is truly on the financial side, trying to rationalize the investment. I didn't state it up front, but I'm married to an accountant.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah, I know what that means.
Yeah, so being married to an accountant means that I had to have every I dotted and every T crossed.
That's right.
Which is, fortunate for us. I mean, that's great,
That's right.
And I'll be honest with you, the only reason I have any money to start this franchise is because she took all the money I made and put it somewhere, and we were able to do this. But still, not wanting to just throw money into a bucket and say, okay, we're just going to go do something. Part of it is trying to really go through the throes of whether or not this investment is going to give you a return. And then going through the process of small business loans, capital, negotiating, even though Anytime provided the equipment manufacturers, we still had to go and work with each one of those to negotiate what we're going to get. So, that part was a little bit more heavy than I expected it to be. And then, finding a location and then going through the process of getting a lease done. I will tell you something that I honestly did incorrectly, and anybody who wants to know, wants to benefit from this learning. But if you don't sync up your small business loan and your lease and your construction, your equipment delivery, or whatever you might need, whether it's a restaurant or whatever, if those things don't sync up, you lose a chunk of money somewhere. And quite honestly, I've lost a chunk of money because they didn't sync up. And part of the challenge in Houston is that when we opened up that year, so did Hurricane Harvey show up. So that also got in the way. And so what happens is the landlord is like, hey, look, I got a lease. So I don't care about your small business problems. I don't care about your equipment delays, your construction delays, or Hurricane Harvey. I still need to get paid my rent. So when those things don't sync up, you have to be very, very deliberate about making sure you can sync all those things up so that you don't end up losing money or overpaying for money before you make money. Mm-hmm. And that was the situation that we started with.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And there will be obstacles, and I think it shows the resiliency, I think, that you and your wife had to move through that. So it brings me to another point. So how long did it take you to get your return on investment?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was probably about 3.5 years.
3.5 years. That's about the average.
About 3.5 years.
Yeah.
Now I will say that 3.5 years we have been set back because, of course, the recent events of the world. So, so the last 2 years have not been very good. But up until that point, October 2019, I will tell you, was the best month we ever had. Oh. And we were, rocking and rolling really in October 2019. And then all of a sudden things, some competitive landscape, other things happened. And then, of course, COVID showed up. And so we've been fighting ever since. And I would tell you, you mentioned the word resiliency.
Yeah.
If it wasn't for the fact that I'm one of these people that never stay down, we have fought and fought and fought. I have fought and fought and fought. And I'm finally now back at the point where I can breathe again. Mm-hmm. So, but, I'm just a very deliberate person, and never take no for an answer. And so I kept fighting and fighting, changing things. And again, my next biggest challenge was still the people. And I've gone through this for 30 years in corporate America, but boy, I have had to start and stop with people for the last 2 years as well. Mm-hmm. And right now, I would tell you that I have a good core group of trainers. I hired a new manager, and the diverse nature of the group that I have, we have now, since the pandemic started, we just had our best month ever.
Nice.
But it has much more to do with having the right people who buy into where I'm trying to go, and that makes a lot of sense. Let me before you ask another question, let me tell you what really did change when I got this new group of people. While we were going through this whole episode with the pandemic, and it's what truly happens, you end up chasing a penny. Chasing a penny, constantly chasing a penny, constantly trying to save a penny, chase a penny, save a penny, and what ends up happening is you lose sight of what you're really trying to accomplish. And for years in corporate America, I never did that. And fortunately, you work for a big company, chasing a penny is not necessarily what you do, but you strategically always start out with what you're trying to accomplish. And then you work from there to ensure that the actions and the goals that you're planning for actually meet what you're leading to do. Well, in January, well, actually December, but going into this new year, I decided to change what I was doing. Instead of chasing a penny, I decided to change and state publicly to all of our gym population and to the people outside our gym that the purpose for our gym is to improve the self-esteem of the community. And that everything we do is to improve the self-esteem of the community, right? We don't want to rent you gym equipment like most gyms. Most gyms, you get a membership and you go in there and they say, okay, there you go. There's a bunch of equipment, go work out. Yeah, well, you don't know what to do. You don't know how to do it. So we're stepping back and saying, okay, yeah, we want you to work out, but how do we help you understand why you're working out? How do we help you understand what your goal truly is? Where are you starting from? And then help you with what to do and how to do. And if we can do that, we can tug at your heart. You get your goals met. You want to be with us long term. And then you tell your friends about us. And so that has resulted in me hiring the people that believe in that mission, as opposed to hiring people in the past who are trying to chase a penny. If you're chasing that penny, sometimes you lose sight of what your real value is. And the real value for us is providing surprisingly personable service. And so if we can do that, then hopefully our next several months will be a result of success for that.
Wow. I love that story. I love that story because in my coaching business, I help my clients to explore their why. What's your purpose? And it's got to be bigger than money. Most of them say, I want to retire. I want to make a lot of money. Yeah, it can't be that because, money is everywhere. So what is your real purpose? And when you find that and you're able to communicate it not only to yourself first, but your clients and then your workers, then all of a sudden the floodgates can open because people understand that you're something bigger than just wanting to make money. So serving the community and being about helping people to increase their overall health, not just putting equipment out there and go get it, is amazing. And that's why you're seeing the fruits of that now, even after the pandemic. So there's a question in the chat.
Yes. So Valerie wants to know, how did Ben and his wife choose their specific franchise since there are so many options?
So, good question. I didn't choose to do gyms first. We got in the portal for Chick-fil-A and other things. And Chick-fil-A, has this long line for you to get in. And what they wanted
literally, because the line's always around the building.
Always around the building. But if you can get in there and you can start at Chick-fil-A and go through the process of, building it up, that truly is, they print money, but they also, that it's a tough business. I have some other friends who are actually doing a Chick-fil-A. So that's how I got going in there. But Chick-fil-A was less willing to accommodate my lifestyle. I needed to do something that wasn't going to pull me further away from home. So Chick-fil-A wanted me to go to Seguin, Texas, which is, 2.5 hours from where I am, to open a Chick-fil-A. And no, we're not going to do that because my kids were in high school at that time. And my wife was the president of the booster club for band. I was the president of the booster club for baseball. We were like, of the parents of the high school, 2 of the 5 that were actively driving what happened. And, my purpose for my kids at that point was to ensure that they had the best high school experience possible. So why would I go and chase Chick-fil-A just for some money? And so I didn't. But I sat around and, did some more studying, and I said, well, look, I go to the gym. Maybe I ought to just look into putting a gym in my house just so I can stay in shape and keep on doing the other stuff I'm doing. Well, looking at equipment and stuff like that drew me into the nature of opening a gym franchise. Well, as I pulled up all of the possibilities, there are certainly some gym franchises that are very expensive. The cost of entry is very high. You
That's
got
right.
big buildings and things like that. And then you have low cost of entry gyms, but their support is a whole lot less. Their brand awareness is even worse than Anytime. And Anytime Fitness is the biggest gym franchise on the planet, and still people don't know about it. So certainly there's this spectrum of things that we looked at. And so, given that I do have this passion, because even at that time I was playing basketball at the Y. I'm now 57 years old. I'm 52 years old playing basketball at the Y. And so I needed something to try to ensure that my why for staying healthy was going to line up as well. So you start looking at money, investment, brand management, support. Literally, that's why, most people don't do this, but I bought 2 tickets and my wife and I went to just go visit them in Minneapolis and try to figure this thing out. So that's how we got to Anytime as a franchise, because it's something that I already have a passion for, and then evaluating it from there. That's how we got to Anytime.
That due diligence is so important, and that's what I help to guide my clients through. It's so important looking at and factoring in the lifestyle you see yourself wanting to lead. You mentioned your kids were in school. That is so very important, because the worst thing I could do is recommend a franchise that didn't match up to the lifestyle that you see yourself living currently and wanting to live in the future. So I thank you for bringing that forward as well. Let me check
I have a
the chat.
question while you check the chat. So your brand or your industry suffered a lot during COVID. How did the franchisor help you all to deal with what was going on?
Yeah, and I would tell you that across the board, Anytime, just like any other gym company, suffered tremendously. I don't know the absolute numbers, but I'll tell you that Anytime has about 5,000 franchise gyms around the world. In the US, they had about 3,000 prior to the pandemic. They're down to like 2,600 in the US after that. The average membership of the gyms in the US has dropped by 10%, at least 10%. And so there are some that didn't drop, and there are some that dropped way farther than that. And I would tell you, my gym dropped way further than that. We dropped probably 25 to 30% in membership. So we haven't even recouped that. But what Anytime as a company did was said, okay, we're going to put some things in place to try to help you guys manage, because state to state, there were different rules. So if you want to set up a scheduling system, which some municipalities and states required, you had to schedule your time in the gym. They created a system that allowed people to schedule themselves in the gym, so we could manage the 6-foot distance rule, things like that. They allowed us to put into a place for our key system. So for some gyms, they had to close overnight. So to put in different regulations and allow us to manage how we were opening and not. So they did a good job of helping us match what our municipalities were expecting. And then when different municipalities requested you to close, so here in Houston or in Texas, we were all mandated to close for about 60 days. So from literally about the beginning of March to the beginning of April, somewhere in there, but about 60 days. So what Anytime did was, through ABC Financial, which is the back office for all the Anytimes, they allowed us to figure out how to stop charging people and then pick it up and not have to, because nobody's dues are on the same date, but allowed us to prorate, figure it out so that we didn't negatively impact people across that board. Which, by the way, which is what happened to 24-Hour Fitness, because they didn't do that.
Mm-hmm.
They ended up ultimately being sued and going into bankruptcy because they couldn't. So that's what happened to 24-Hour Fitness. And so Anytime, through their financial company, helped set up a way that we could manually not charge people so that we didn't get into the same bind.
Wow.
So they did support us. And now coming out of this, we are trying to, Anytime is trying to ride the wave of the new trends that fitness and health are starting to put in place, and then help us try to catch those waves as we come out of this.
Yeah, when you choose a franchise, it's important to understand your franchisor and have a relationship with them, because let's face it, more crises are behind this one. And so when making a decision, you really got to establish a connection and a relationship with the franchisor. It's not just about the end. So thank you for sharing that.
And then the other thing, that's the value, I think, of franchising. When these outside kind of uncontrollable things that happen, if you're in business by yourself, you got to figure it out. But in a franchise model, you have that franchisor, that team to support you, to get you through, pivot, flex, figure it out with a team. So that's the value of a franchise team. I think we have another question in the chat. As a franchisee, Ben said he can't personalize his business, but can Ben use his own content marketing to attract and retain customers?
Absolutely. Now so Anytime Fitness, and this is another point that you're making, Jennifer, and Tony, about choosing a franchise that's going to allow you what you need, right? So if I were to choose Chick-fil-A, there's very, very little room to personalize in any Chick-fil-A. So if you go to one Chick-fil-A, it's exactly the same no matter where you go. I mean, there's no Ben's Chick-fil-A anywhere, right? There's that they have a much, much tighter rein on brand marketing and awareness. Anytime, their reign is more like a 70-30. We're required to have certain color schemes and logos and brand marketing. But my gym is Anytime Fitness Grand Parkway. And so I'm allowed to, through my Facebook channel, through my Instagram, fortunately, I hired a 18-year-old kid to start my TikTok. I have 10 thumbs. I'm not very good at that stuff. But what that allows is now through those channels locally, they can see me. They can see our gym. They can see how we operate, even differently than any other Anytime Fitness. Because as I mentioned ahead of time, I'm trying to be focused on our mission, which is to improve the self-esteem of the community.
That's right.
If we can do that, and if I can display that in our local social marketing, then people can see that, resonate with it, and they can make their choice relative to that. So not every franchise will allow that kind of flexibility. Actually, Anytime expects that, because they are much more community gyms as opposed to some of the big box gyms that are, hey, Planet Fitness they only exist one way. And so there is some flexibility for the brand that we are. So, if you choose a franchise, ask that question, how much of this can be about me and how much is it going to be relegated to only what your brand is going to show? Because depending on where you're located, you may not be able to market to the local community the way that I can.
That's a great segue, I think, into um, my final question. And Tony, do you have any other questions
I do
before?
not. Thank you.
And so, Ben, if you were to speak to someone who is looking or on the fence about fitness franchise or getting into franchising, what would be your advice to them?
Well, it's probably a couple of folds, but I'm going to tell you one of the things that I tell. I have multiple passions. I will tell you, Jennifer and Tony, multiple passions, and one of my latest passions, and I'm trying to figure out how to put this more in place. But mentoring young people about their futures. I was raised in Houston by a dad who was a college educated guy, but from his generation and his parents' generation, all Black people are told, most Black men especially, get an education so you can get a good job.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We're not told, we are not coached into getting to your own business or starting your own business or having your own, creating wealth, which is different than making a lot of money. That's not what we were told. And so for the longest, all my mindset was, I'm just going to work hard. I'm going to grind. I'm going to just do what I'm supposed to do. Fortunately, I'm married to a woman who saw further than that. So that does help. But what I tell young people today, you're going to get a job, get your education and get a job, because that money is going to be the foundation of where your future is going to go. But what you need to start doing, of course, is taking advantage of any of the savings plans. So if there's a 401 retirement plan, what you put all your money in that. Of course, what you should do naturally is be able to save for a rainy day, because your brakes are going to go out, the refrigerator's going to play out. You never know. But of course, you're going to want to save for that, right? But what you should do, in my experience, especially in HR, is that 90 to 95% of people who do work for a company are going to get to a point, I don't know what time, what place, when it's going to happen, what age, but you're going to get to a point that either you or that company don't want to be together.
Mm-hmm.
And if that happens, if you can save $1 extra outside of those other two spaces, $1 extra, so that when that does happen and you have a passion like health and fitness, or you have a passion like a dress barn or whatever it might be, or you want to start something, you got to set money set aside so you don't have to touch the 401k. You don't have to touch your rainy day money. This is all set aside so that you can be able to say, now I'm prepared based on my education, based on my experience, based on the learnings that I've gotten for the last 10, 15, 20 years, I can go start my own business. That's what I would tell most people, because at some point, most of us will not finish our career with the company that we started, and you need to be prepared for that.
That is such sound advice. And with that, Ben, we thank you for being with us. We thank you for me. We thank you for being a part of your community and offering services that you do. And Tony, did you have any parting words for Ben?
So Ben is in Houston. Ben, if you'll tell people, I have it scrolling, but tell people how they can connect with you.
So my individual Anytime Fitness, there are 45 Anytimes in Houston. My Anytime Fitness is on the southwest side of town in Richmond. And if you're in Houston, you know Houston has a series of loops around the city. So 610, 8, Beltway 8, and then 99. So we're located right on Grand Parkway, Highway 99 in Richmond, Texas, on the southwest side. So feel free to give me a call at that number, and feel free to look up Anytime Fitness Grand Parkway, and you should be able to find us just in any kind of Google search.
Wonderful. And then the phone number I have scrolling is that. I hope that's the correct number. I got it from
that's the correct number. You will reach me. You will reach me directly.
Great. I'm actually going to reach out to you next week, because I have a question, not for the public. So expect my call, okay, Ben?
I will absolutely expect your call, and I will tell you one of the other things I tell young people, and I beat it into my kids' heads right now. They're in college. You're only as smart as the people you know.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you can surround yourself with some other people that know something that you don't, just by osmosis, you're going to be better at what you already do. So I would appreciate the call, Tony, and look forward to it.
Oh, that's
Wonderful.
awesome.
Go ahead,
Well,
Jen.
thank you again, Ben, and thank you for everything that you do. Look forward to reach out from Tony and myself. I have some things in mind as well, but I wish you well. Thank you for your time.
So Ben, that was awesome. He gave us a lot of great
That was a lot.
right?
A
So from engineer, corporate,
lot of good information. Well spent.
and then he went through the pandemic. That industry
That's
was
right.
hit so hard
That's
by
right.
the pandemic. And now to going to his why to support the community, and his business is turning around because he's living out his why.
He's
got
doing the work. That's
there
right.
and doing the work.
That's right.
So excellent. Thank you so much, Ben. It was nice to meet you. And so we're excited. Next week, we'll have another guest.
We
And
will.
then the week after, we will be live from the International Franchise
So
Association.
you think we will come on the show live from International Franchise Association? Let's do it.
Oh, yes, absolutely. It was already in my plans. So
yeah, let's do it.
we're just
Straight
going to
from
pull
San
some
Diego.
franchisors to the side and let them
That's
say
right.
hi and introduce
That's right.
themselves. So we'll have some fun with that.
Exciting.
All right. Any other thoughts, Jennifer?
No, I think we're done here. That was a great session. Yeah.
Yay, another great session. Thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in. Whether if you're in replay, just hit replay, share it. So share it from our pages over to your page. We are in LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. So sharing is caring, and start inviting your friends to listen to the Fantastic Duo. This is Tony Harris Taylor.
And this is Jennifer Calendar
saying take a drastic step today for a fantastic tomorrow.
Bye, everybody.